Hello everyone, Nicholson here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Nicholson. This is the show where we'll be breaking down all of the day's movie news and kind of giving a little bit of background into what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, with today being Friday, our first topic of the day is going to be the review of the major release coming out this week. This week's installment is of the new Wally Pfister movie, which is called Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp. I had a lot of high hopes going into this film. The Wally Pfister is making his directorial debut in this movie. For those of you who don't know, Wally Pfister is the director of photography on, up until this point, every single Christopher Nolan movie. He's been in from everything from Insomnia through all the Dark Knight movies, Prestige, Inception. He obviously had nothing to do with Interstellar, which is going to be coming out later this year, because he was working on Transcendence. But the movie essentially is about Johnny Depp's character, who is at the forefront of like neuroscience and basically, you know, creating artificial intelligence and what could potentially be the next step for medicinal purposes in terms of, you know, technology and all this kind of stuff. And he is and this is in the trailer, so this is not technically going to be a spoiler, but just in case if you haven't seen any of the trailers, consider this a minor spoiler. He is attacked. He's shot by a member of a radical group called Rift, and the bullet ends up being poisoned. So even though the bullet doesn't kill him, the poison that goes through his system, it's basically radiation poisoning, and he slowly starts to die. And so his wife, who's also his scientific partner, and his best friend, who's again another one of his scientific partners, have all been working on this ability. It's called PIN, which is an artificial intelligence. It's physically inert neural network or something. It basically says that it doesn't need a physical body, but it's still a consciousness. And so this kind of really lays the seeds out. And the next section of the movie, like, this all happens within the first 20 to 25 minutes of the film. And so they decide that even though there's nothing they can do for him, physically for him, they're going to try to upload his consciousness into this computer. And then the rest of the movie continues to be basically, well, what's left in their humanity? What how do I describe it? It's the movie doesn't really hit all these things very well, but it's essentially, yeah, like what's left in humanity when you take the human essence out of it, when it's just a consciousness, when it's just an intelligence. Where does the humanity come from, and what sort of things do you start to lose? Now, the one thing, I'm going to go out there and say again, these are all my personal opinions. So, I mean, I've looked up some of the reviews after I went and saw the film, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. Currently, the film is sitting at, I believe, an 18% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not very good. And in case you don't know what Rotten Tomatoes is not a review website. It is a section or a web page and a program that these people created, which takes every review that has been posted online from a reputable news source or authorized through the MPAA to give reviews about these movies in a formal way. It takes all of those and then takes whichever ones are good. They basically say good or bad. They give them a rating, like this one says fresh, this one says rotten, and so they take all of those together and build up the average. And so right now, only 18% of the people out there have actually enjoyed, out of the reviews that they've taken, only 18% of the people have actually liked it. And a couple of problems that I had with it. First off, it's boring. I never thought I would say that about a movie based solely in technology, especially considering the talent that's involved, being Wally Pfister. I mean, the guy knows how to shoot a film. Clearly now he needed to spend a little bit more time monitoring what Christopher Nolan was doing with his actors, because he doesn't really have a grasp on how to direct. Now again, he's a major player in Hollywood, therefore most of the people who are going to be criticizing him, he would most likely be able to do a better job than they are. That being said, it's his position, especially in this kind of situation, to be professional and to be one of the best. Therefore, he already has a level of standard that he has to adhere to. Not saying like, well, you couldn't do any better. I hate that argument. That to me is asinine, because I wasn't the one who was given this amount of money. I was not the one who was given this responsibility to perform these tasks. He was. He was there to do a job. He was there to get the right people around him to help him fulfill that job, and he unfortunately failed at it. The first, like, I'm the type of movie, anybody out there who knows me knows that it's almost impossible for me to fall asleep during a movie. I could watch almost any movie and not fall asleep during it. That being said, I almost fell asleep twice watching this movie. It just drags on. Nothing really exciting happens. And when the exciting things come out, they just leave them kind of on the sidelines. Like there's one sequence, I won't spoil what it is, but it takes place about halfway through the film, involving one of the guys who's responsible for building the area that they're in, and something really cool happens with him. And then they really don't take that any further. They still use him throughout the film, but they don't take that idea any further. And that to me was a really missed opportunity. None of the actors really feel comfortable in the role, especially Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp actually doesn't really feel comfortable, I think, because he's not playing a weird character. He's more human when he's playing the machine than when he's actually a human. You know, they didn't really have a sense of what the story was. There's no clear defined hero or villain in the movie, because even though, based on the trailers, as you can tell, Johnny Depp is set up, or his character at least, is set up to be quote-unquote the villain, the antagonist in the movie. But then there's also Kate Mara, who's the leader of this radical group known as Rift. And so she's also played up to be a villain. Neither of which really, I mean, Kate Mara comes across more as a villain than Johnny Depp's character does. Johnny Depp's character comes across as somebody who just doesn't have, not necessarily morals, but he doesn't quite understand that if he's doing something that would be considered to be wrong, he doesn't understand why it's wrong. Not to say that he's maniacal or anything like that. He feels that everything that he's doing, he feels that he's trying to improve everything. He's trying to make it better. Not saying that, you know, humanity is bad. He's not saying that. He's just saying that there are these flaws, not necessarily in people, but there are these flaws in these systems, in this government, in these rules here, and they need to be adjusted. And here, you know, here's police, here's some help, and, you know, doing this and stuff. So the movie never really has a grasp on what it's really trying to be. But the biggest thing for me was the wasted plot lines and the characters. The fact that he had this immense talent involved in the movie. You had everybody from Cillian Murphy to Morgan Freeman, Johnny Depp. You had Rebecca Hall, Paul Bettany. You know, I mean, like the amount of talent. Not to mention Wally Pfister. I mean, his involvement alone. You have Chris Nolan producing it. Now, I'm pretty sure that was just a stamped name. He didn't actually do anything on the film. It was just putting his name attached to it to get more people interested. But yeah, it's unfortunate because I was so looking forward to this movie. The concept behind it is very intriguing. It's so relevant in this time as well, dealing with artificial intelligence and the acceptance of improved technology that can almost advance faster than we can. At least that we can understand. And so I was very disappointed in this movie. It's very unfortunate. I am going to try to check it out one more time, just maybe to see if there was something that I maybe missed, or maybe look at it in a different perspective, and it may be better in that perspective. Again, anyone out there who likes it, awesome. I hope that you do, because this movie, I really wanted to like it, and I just feel really disappointed in the overall execution of the film. It looked great. You know, the direction didn't really seem to be there at all, because it felt like, you know, they got everybody together in a room, set up a camera, and then said, here, do improv. These are the 5 story beats you need to hit, improv everything else. And they just felt, no one felt comfortable, no one felt like they really wanted to be there. Morgan Freeman felt very miscast. He didn't, like, and by miscast I mean almost every role that you see Morgan Freeman in the last, I'd say probably 6, 7, 8 years, he's been a very important character. Even if it's a smaller character, he's been important. This movie, he didn't really seem that way. At least, again, that's what I took away from it. I'm going to go and check it out again, probably either the next week or the week after, and hopefully my opinion changes of the movie. But as it stands right now, it's just, unfortunately, it's not a very good film. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it a 3. Just because it didn't hit anything. It was boring. Nothing really fit well together, and yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, I'm still very much looking forward to anything else that Wally Pfister does in the future, because he's an immense talent, and not just as a DP, but I mean, you can tell he's got the influence of Christopher Nolan. You can tell that in this movie, and even one of the reviews I read said that this is what happens when someone other than Christopher Nolan tries to make a Christopher Nolan movie, because it really does feel like it has his fingerprints on it. But it was just because Wally Pfister has had this, what would it be now? You know, 14-year working relationship with him. When did Memento come out? Like 2000, 2001, and that was Chris Nolan's first movie. So again, very disappointed in it. I was wishing it would be better, but you know, in 2 weeks we got some really good movies coming out, so hopefully the reviews will be better at that point. At least the movies will be better. So yeah, it's unfortunate. If anybody out there who's watching has gone and seen the movie and did like it, please put that in the comments. Let people know that I'm not the only idea out there. I'm not the or what I'm saying is not true to the actual film in general. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that you shouldn't like it. So yeah, if you went out there and you saw it, please post on the comment section that you did like it, or why you did like it, or if you didn't, post on there why you didn't like it. But just please, if you do put a comment there, please try to avoid spoilers. And so now we're going to get into the quick rapid fire section here. And so, for those of you who don't know, Rapid Fire is a section where I'm going to be going through a couple of news items fairly quick because they're either just little tiny updates or there just isn't that much information about it yet. So the first topic in Rapid Fire is actually one that it kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't see this one coming at all, but thinking back on it now, not that there were any seeds, but it does make sense considering some of the other projects that are coming out. But word has come out that Mrs. Doubtfire 2 is actually in the works. For those of you who don't remember Mrs. Doubtfire, it starred Robin Williams back in 1993 about him. He was a failing actor who basically he went to his brother's house and created this new character called Mrs. Doubtfire, who was an elderly woman because he was having a lot of marriage problems and his wife was kicking him out and he really wanted to see his kids. So he had his brother, who was a makeup artist, create this costume for him, which made him look like, I believe, a woman in her mid-60s, an English woman in her mid-60s, so that she could be the nanny and he could still be around his kids. And oh my God, was it funny. I saw that movie, that came out in 93, so I would have been about 6, 7 years old. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and I absolutely loved it. That being said, 21 years later, I don't know why. First off, we don't ever need a sequel to most other movies. Some movies set up for a sequel, or some movies warrant certain characteristics that demand a sequel, or that can be further explored down the line. This, I don't know how they can do it, because the movie ended with him revealing himself to his family. Unless they're going to take it so that it's now based on the show that he was doing, because that's how it ended. The movie actually ended with him doing a Mrs. Doubtfire show. And maybe if they continue on with that, but again, that's now been 20 years. What's it going to be? The show has been on for 20 years. How many shows out there last for 20? I can think of maybe two. They're both. One of them just ended, Law and Order, and the other one is The Simpsons. No other show out there has lasted longer than that. So I don't know. Maybe the show didn't work very well, and now he's coming back. But he wouldn't really need all that much makeup to make him look like an elderly woman. He would just need to make himself look more like a woman, because Robin Williams is in his late 50s, or I think he's in his late 50s or mid 50s. But still, yeah, it just seems weird. But Robin Williams is confirmed to come back. Director Chris Columbus, who directed the original Mrs. Doubtfire. He also directed the Home Alone movies. He directed the first 2 Harry Potter movies. He's returning to direct as well, but there's just no release date yet. So we don't know all that much about it other than it's happening, and the main core essential people are back. So there's at least a ray of hope with that. But this movie kind of, when you look at like the Expendables with all the 80s action heroes coming back, you look at the rumored Goonies sequel, which is going to be happening. A lot of other projects from the 70s and 80s are being revisited for updates. And Dumb and Dumber 2 is coming out. Now that movie came out in 93 or 94. I think it was 94. And so we got the sequel of that coming out this year, which I'm very excited about because we got Jim Carrey back, who's doing a sequel. It's the second sequel he's ever done. The only other one he did was Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and that movie kind of shied him away from doing sequels. So this is intriguing. It's the sequel we never needed. Whether we want one, that's another story. But yeah, when more information comes out about this, I'll definitely update you guys. If you have any ideas as to where they could take the story, please go ahead and put them in the comment section. And then the last section of Rapid Fire today is in dealing with something that I posted this on Twitter, it almost blew my mind that this could potentially be happening, and then we found out that it wasn't what it appeared to be at face value. There was an article that came out, I believe it was Wednesday night. It was shortly after I put up the last episode. And it said that there was a Fox-Sony crossover happening with their Marvel properties. And the fact that... Okay. So the story was, and this is why everyone just lost their minds, because the story came out and said that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 would be having an after-credits sequence that would focus solely on the X-Men. And everyone just went... You know, like finally we're getting the crossover, because in the comics you always see Spider-Man swinging around with the X-Men, or Wolverine and Spider-Man fighting alongside each other in New York. You know, you get all like those are probably the closest knit things, and that would also potentially mean that Spider-Man could be introduced into the Fantastic Four or vice versa. The one thing that I started thinking about was that maybe Sony has been trying to figure out a way to do these other stories other than Spider-Man, and they're really starting to hit a brick wall with that. So now they've struck a deal with Fox. Maybe that's what it is. Unfortunately, what the actual news is, with Mark Webb, the director of the Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the upcoming Amazing Spider-Man 3, which will be released in 2016, he was under contractual obligation through Fox Searchlight, which is 20th Century Fox, basically their indie banner. Because Mark Webb did 500 Days of Summer. That's what got him the Amazing Spider-Man gig. The problem was he was under contract with Fox Searchlight to do another film, and Sony had to buy him out of that essentially in order to return to do the Amazing Spider-Man 2 on the timeline that they originally wanted. The stipulation was that Fox said, yep, that's no problem, we'll let him out. We just need the ability to advertise one of our films. I believe that after further reading, I believe that the initial conversation was that they were to include a scene from X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, the one thing that got me thinking, even before this update came out, was they mentioned what the scene was. And it's a sequence featuring Mystique, oh, I can't even remember his name. Cyclops' father. I was having a conversation with somebody else the other day, and I still couldn't remember his name. Then I can't remember it now. But the character in the first movie who could shoot the beam out of his chest, he was Scott Summers' dad, or older brother, I should say. It takes place between those two and Toad and William Stryker, and it's set on like an army base in Vietnam, I think. And so that right there, them including that, Spider-Man doesn't take place in the past; it takes place now. Them including one of the sequences from the past, that was just like, okay, maybe this is just laying the seed for something later on, but that to me seemed a little bit weird. But what it was in order for Sony to get Mark Webb to come back, Fox said, you guys have to put a clip of one of our upcoming movies, and I believe that Future Past was the film in question, not just one of their other topics. So then they had to include that instead of putting in an after-credits sequence for Spider-Man, because apparently at this point they're not quite ready. They don't really have a solid idea. Now, if that's the case, that worries me, because they already have a start date for filming. They're going to start filming in the fall. And if they don't really have a clear idea, or when they were developing it had a clear idea of where they want to take the next one, and just film a quick little 2-minute scene, or not even 2-minute scene to put at the end of the stinger, well, that has me a little bit worried now, because Sony came out and said that we're doing Amazing Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 3, we want to do Amazing Spider-Man 4, we're also doing Sinister Six, we're doing Venom, we got other spin-off movies that we're going to be doing, so they got a really grand idea of what they want to do. But now it looks as though, if this is the case, if this is the reason why they didn't include one of their after-credit sequences, and maybe just didn't put the X-Men scene at the beginning, or, you know, like maybe not instead of an after-credit sequence, but you know, have it after all the credits. Have there be a Spider-Man-centric mid-credit sequence, and then after the credits do the X-Men thing. So I don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach, who are the producers of the Spider-Man's franchise, and they used to be the producers of a lot of the other Marvel movies as well, they said that the only way that there would ever be a crossover is if they ran out of ideas. And currently they have multiple ideas to work with, so it's very sad that we're not getting this. I was very, very excited for this, because it looked as though Fox and Sony were going to team up to go head-to-head against Marvel, and as well as DC, because DC is starting to build up theirs with, they got Batman vs. Superman, they got a potential Wonder Woman movie, as well as Batman standalone movies, and then we got most likely Green Lantern, Aquaman, Flash movies coming out. Like, they're really going to start to build up their universe once Batman vs. Superman comes out in 2016. So now let's get on to the last segment of the show, which is user-submitted questions. So I have 2 of them to talk about today, but anytime you guys have a question or a topic that you would like to talk about on the show, go ahead and put it in the comments section. You can also message me on Twitter at Nicholson, Niklsun, or you can email the show at movienewswithnicholson@gmail.com. So the first question comes to us today from Jason Mercier. And for those of you who don't know, Jason Mercier is the writer of 2 novels, currently working on the 3rd. The first one is called Darker Needs, and the second book, which is the follow-up, is called Even Darker Needs. You can find the link to where these books are on the main title card of the homepage of my YouTube section. But make sure you guys definitely check it out because they're great reads. They're very good suspense thrillers, and he's currently working on the finale of that trilogy. But his question is, what is the potential status of Lethal Weapon 5? Because the other day we were talking about Die Hard 6, and there's a couple of things. There actually was something that I didn't even know about that came out about a year and a half ago about this, but there were plans in the early 2000s to do another one. Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Richard Donner, they were all kind of gearing up and thinking about, okay, what can we do? Can we do another one? Is there room to do another one? Where can these characters go? It fell short, or it fell short partly or shortly after that, mainly due to the fact that if you look at all the films, and they even said this in an interview, when you look at all the past films, in Lethal Weapon 2 they introduced Joe Pesci, so there is now a 3rd main character. Then you got Rene Russo in the 3rd movie. Then you got Chris Rock in the 4th movie. Now in the 6th movie you got to have another main character, so that would now be 6 main characters. And then your supporting cast and your villain and all this, that, and the other thing. So the movie would just get too crowded. Gibson wasn't really keen on sticking into acting as well. At that point, he was really trying to get his directing under the way, which was like he was doing Passion of the Christ, and or he was prepping Passion of the Christ, and he also wanted to get to an Aztec-based story, which eventually became Apocalypto. And Danny Glover also had, he suffered from some health problems. That's why you haven't seen him in a lot of movies in a long time. He started to come back in the last few years with a couple of roles in bigger films, but for the most part, he's had a lot of health problems that have withheld him from doing a lot of that stuff. And but last year, rumor surfaced that they may be looking at penciling in a 2015 release date and potentially gearing up to do Lethal Weapon 5. The supposed script for this, or the supposed kind of storyline for this, would have been about Riggs and Murtaugh enjoying retirement on a road trip of sorts, and hijinks ensue. The actual quote from Richard Donner said that they would be in the woods or in the forest or something like that with a camper, and they stop to get gas, and they, for some reason, Danny Glover's character doesn't put the brakes on, and the RV goes through the whole neighborhood and destroys a whole bunch of stuff, and that to me just screams terrible, like absolutely awful. That has nothing to do with Lethal Weapon whatsoever. Lethal Weapon is hard, gritty, funny, psychotic. Like Riggs, for the most part, is borderline suicidal. Like it's part of the appeal of these movies, that he is on such a fine line. He's on such an edge that it's really funny because of some of the things that he does, and that's why people really like those movies. If you do something like this, there's no suspense for the characters anymore. They're now just going around and being almost like a Three Stooges movie or a straight up comedy, which is not what Lethal Weapon was. They almost went that route with Lethal Weapon 4, where it was almost a straight up comedy with a little bit of action. So I hope that if this is the case, I hope that we don't get it, because for those of you who watch a very good television series, we've already got a version of Lethal Weapon 5. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, it's on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in season 6. I can't remember exactly what episode, but they actually show off their version of Lethal Weapon 5 with if you haven't watched it yet, you got to go check it out. It's hilarious. Just even go on YouTube. I think it should be on there. Type in Lethal Weapon 5 or It's Always Sunny, and they should have the segment on there. It's absolutely hilarious. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. But that so far was the most that we've heard on Lethal Weapon 5. So if I had to put money on it right now, I would say we're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. The people involved are not really into it anymore. We're more than likely going to be getting a reboot within the next 5 to 10 years of that property. They're really going back and grabbing franchises that no longer they can continue, but they can reboot it. So I would say probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a Lethal Weapon reboot on the way. And the last topic that we're going to be talking about today, another gentleman wrote in about Spider-Man being possibly in a Venom movie. And I touched on this the other day, or last week, I believe. But again, I don't believe that it's very likely that we would see Spider-Man show up in a Venom movie. The reason being is that they're going to try to separate Venom as much as they can. If Spider-Man shows up, it's a Spider-Man movie. So I don't believe that that's the way that they're going to go. They have said we're not ruling anything out, but it's very unlikely. Again, it's going to be more or less focused on Eddie Brock, who I believe is the version of Venom that they're going to be going with. And he is going to be... the time frame, or the timeline that I have a feeling is going to happen is this movie is going to be set before the Sinister Six film. And I have a feeling that this movie is going to show him as starting off as a bad guy, but kind of becoming the redemption good guy. And then one thing happens, and he has to join up with this other band of quote-unquote villains in order to stay alive, basically to stay afloat, to keep himself going. So I have a feeling that's the route they're going to take with the cinematic version of Venom, and he's going to fight Carnage. I'm almost guaranteeing that he's going to fight Carnage in that movie. We have Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci writing it, who wrote Amazing Spider-Man 2. They're co-writing Amazing Spider-Man 3, and Alex Kurtzman is going to be making his directorial debut with Venom. So that's going to be really interesting, but as it stands right now, no, I don't see Spider-Man appearing in a Venom movie. He might show up as like a front page newspaper article, or you might see him on television, like on a news report or something like that, but you're not going to see Venom interacting with Spider-Man. They're probably going to do that for Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 3. I have a feeling they're going to do similar to what they did in Spider-Man 3, the Sam Raimi version. Venom is going to be one character in this movie, and I'm almost certain Doc Ock is going to be the other one. I think they're going to save Vulture, maybe even introduce Vulture. But the two main rumors going around are the two villains are going to be Doc Ock and Vulture, and then Venom will be slowly introduced in that film, or just lightly touched upon. Maybe Eddie Brock will just be a background character in that movie. And then the Venom symbiote will attach itself to him, or he will somehow come in contact with it, and that will then bridge the gap into a Venom standalone movie. Because we can't have a Venom origin and a Carnage origin in the same movie. You're going to have to take away too much from those, or if you spend too much time on it, then there's not going to be enough for anything else in the film. So they have to at least develop the Venom character, or at least the character of Eddie Brock, before the Venom film. But yeah, as it stands right now, I don't see Spider-Man showing up, swinging around in the city in the Venom standalone film. Well, that'll about do it for Coming Soon Movie News with Nicholson. Thank you so much. You guys have been a great audience. And again, don't forget to click the subscribe button right down here. Click subscribe. You will get updates on all of my episodes whenever I post them. As well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter. You can find me at Twitter at Nicholson, NIKLSUN, to get all of your updates on all movie-related information, anything from rumors to full-blown announcements. I'll be posting everything on there. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments or anything of that sort that you would like for me to address on the show, or when I get a future co-host, when we can discuss it more as a back and forth, you can put it in the comment section below. You can also message me on Twitter at Nicholson, NIKLSUN, or you can email me at movienewswithnicholson@gmail.com. So it's just movienewswithnicholson@gmail.com. So, like I said, this has been Nicholson. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for watching, and you take care.